The extraordinary experiences and encounters of Pauline Delcourt-Min, hailing from Manchester, England, undoubtedly stand out as some of the most extraordinary and mind-stirring documented accounts. Not only does Pauline assert that she has endured numerous instances of alien abduction, but her regressions to past lives have unveiled a fascinating revelation that she once existed as a member of the extraterrestrial species, responsible for the unsettling encounters that have marked her life. Perhaps because of this unique perspective, if indeed it is accurate, we get an inside look at the history of the gray alien race, a civilization that many believe is behind many of the alien abduction encounters that have been taking place around the world for the last 3/4 of a century. What makes Pauline's recollections even more intriguing, both of her abduction encounters and of her apparent past lives, is that they resonate very nicely with the conclusions of other UFO and alien abduction investigators. And while they should be treated, like most such claims, with a cautionary pinch of salt, they are both mind-bending and potentially important. Delcourt-Min has written of her encounters in several books, perhaps most prominently, Divine Fire, and also spoken of them in multiple podcasts online. Pauline had experienced many apparent cases of alien abduction over the course of her life, going back to when she was young. In July 1964, when she was only 16 years old, Pauline was with her best friend, walking in the Cheshire countryside. The two girls were talking as they walked, the day pleasant and warm. Then, however, things changed suddenly. Without realizing what had happened, the next thing Pauline realized was that she was in a field. What's more, she was on her hands and knees with no knowledge of why or how. When she got up from the ground and stood up, she could see the look on her friend's face told her she was equally as perplexed and mystified. After taking a moment to collect themselves, with the evening skies now beginning to darken with the setting sun, the two friends decided to set out for home and attempted to go back the way they must have come to arrive here. It was only when they were making their way back that a passerby alerted Pauline to the fact that she had sustained some kind of injury to her leg. When she looked down at herself, she could see her sock was soaked with blood, and an examination of her leg revealed a cut on her calf. It was then, for the first time, that she realized not only did she not feel any pain from the wound, but her leg almost felt numb and cold. The two girls finally returned home, and over the coming days and weeks, the wound healed with no problem. Pauline was, though, left with a very prominent scar for the rest of her life. In fact, by the summer of 1992, she rarely thought about the scar on her leg. However, when her husband, told of an alien abduction account he had read in the book Missing Time by Bud Hopkins, each of them thought of the marking once more, not least as the one described in the account appeared to be almost identical. This realization would lead to further revelations suddenly recalled from the depths of Pauline's mind. She began to recall other episodes of Missing Time, ones that stretched back to when she was a small child. She also had fleeting memories of strange objects in the skies, and even of the feeling that she was being monitored somehow. Feelings she had since forgotten. Eventually, several months later, in September 1992, she made the decision to have herself regressed so that she could recall the events of July 1964. And, as we might imagine, the revelations were as enthralling as they were unsettling. She recalled that at some point while she and her friend were walking, they suddenly became caught up in an energy beam that seemed to disconnect us from the Earth's energy field. The next thing they realized, they were being lifted off the ground and into the air. Moments later, they were being drawn diagonally upwards toward a strange object that hovered above them. As she approached an opening in the waiting objects, she heard what appeared to be telepathic messages entering her mind. She was told that she wouldn't come to any harm, that she would go to sleep, and that she would not remember nothing of the encounter. The next thing she realized, they were in a strange round room, presumably inside the craft. Around them were multiple tables, as well as many other medical-like machines and devices. As she looked around, she could see she herself was strapped to one of the tables, and that other people were being beamed in all the time, with each table seemingly having so many of the short, gray alien creatures attending to them. She would describe these apparent aliens as being small and gray with spindly arms and legs, with fingers like hollow straws. She further described them as having large heads and huge black eyes, with each wearing tight-fitting gray suits. Of further interest, while all these procedures and experiments were taking place, information appeared to come to Pauline, seemingly telepathically and purposely from her hosts. She revealed that these checks were a regular occurrence and that the Greys had a big file concerning her. She would then state that this alien race's main purpose behind alien abductions was a breeding program, which, as bizarre as it sounds, is something that other researchers have also concluded, including John Mack and David Jacobs. She would continue that these aliens are looking to create physical bodies to incarnate into, offering that they preferred a long body with plenty of room for internal organs and long limbs. She also stated that she was considered by them to be a reserve, or a second-class specimen, although she was still of use to the cloning program they were undertaking. In fact, it was while they were collecting cells from her that she received the wound on her calf. She would elaborate that those who were performing the procedures on this particular occasion were limited in their knowledge and experience, and so caused a larger wound than they should have. They ensured the wound would not become infected, and then, telepathically, ordered her to not seek medical attention for the wound and to let it heal by itself, which, of course, she duly did. She stated that she had the realization that the information that was coming to her answered questions she had asked in her mind. She claimed that thought is more powerful in the dimension they work in, and that merely thinking a question automatically brought the answer. The Greys themselves were aware of this, and so did their best to block memories of these encounters, although such memories could be unlocked through hypnotic regression. Although she had answers to the scar and how she received it, a further strange episode occurred to herself and her husband several years later in August 1996, when they, along with their 2 children, ventured out on a short break in Scotland. It was several hours into their journey when events took a strange turn. Pauline recalled how it was a bright day for most of the journey, but that the environment around them suddenly grew darker. It was then that they noticed a black car driving directly behind them, a vehicle that Pauline recalled had something menacing about it, although she couldn't state what. She noticed that her husband seemed uneasy about the car too, although he was unable to pull away as there was another car in front of him. Then, things changed. With no recall of him having done so, their car was now pulling in front of the car ahead of them. Even stranger, the car behind them had seemingly disappeared. Pauline felt terribly unsettled, as though they had once again experienced an encounter that they couldn't recall. The couple and their children eventually arrived at their destination and did their best to enjoy the family break. When they returned home, however, they decided to use their regression skills to discover just what had happened on that Scottish road. Once at home, with Pauline under regression, details of the journey to Scotland emerged. Pauline recalled that as they drove along the road, a beam of light that slants diagonally from behind us appeared. Within moments, they had driven directly into it, causing the vehicle to be drawn into it and into the air. She further described it as being like a tractor beam, and that upon entering it, they were frozen, and that time had stopped for the couple. She then recalled looking down at the treetops as the vehicle began approaching a spherical object that was hovering overhead and from where the beam of light was coming from. The car was brought through an opening in the side of the craft, and upon being placed in a room, several strange creatures descended on it and removed them from the vehicle. These entities were not the Greys and appeared almost cat-like, other than walking on 2 legs, complete with their tails and fur. The creatures led the children off to another room, neither of whom were scared or even surprised by them, as if they had seen them before. Pauline and Ye, on the other hand, were both in a strange zombie-like trance throughout the encounter, something likely induced in them by their abductors. The pair were led to a room that contained 2 tables, upon which they were placed. As voices entered their minds, telling them not to be afraid, the table lit up. The light, though, was strange, as if it wrapped around their bodies like a strange coffin. The next thing she realized, Pauline recalled, was being taken back to their car. Upon arriving there, she could see the children had already been returned and were asleep in the back seat. After they were placed inside, The car was sent back toward the ground in the beam of light that had pulled them up into the craft. Halfway down, the car stopped, and the same light they had experienced on the table surrounded their vehicle. Pauline recalled that this strange light was similar to administering medical attention to them, elaborating that it was a method of healing, and that it programmed them with information. The next memory she had was of being in the car with Ya driving and overtaking the vehicle in front of them. This is where their conscious memories of that strange day began, and Pauline recalled sensing immediately that something truly out of the ordinary had taken place, which of course it had. While encounters with alien entities are undoubtedly strange and intriguing enough, when Delcourt decided to have herself regressed to one of her past lives, of which she claimed to have had many, she discovered she had more of a connection to the gray alien race than she could have possibly imagined. She had asked a student of hers, Francesca, to conduct the regression session, which took place in her home in Manchester. Using the same methods she herself had used countless times when performing regression therapy, Francesca guided Pauline into a deep meditative state and back through many years to a former existence. Within moments, she was looking through the eyes of a previous self that had lived millions of years ago. However, despite looking to explore her past lives in more detail, following the many apparent encounters with gray alien entities, she was unprepared for what she was about to discover. She spoke out at what she was seeing, claiming she was looking down at my feet. She began to describe them, offering that they were gray with 4 toes that are a little webbed. She continued that she had slender legs, body, and arms, and that her hands had 3 fingers and a little thumb, as well as being long and slightly webbed. Then the realization hit her. "I am a gray," she stated, continuing that she was a mature adult male whose name was Arkid. The revelations, however, were only just beginning. As the session continued over several hours, not only did Pauline offer details of her past life as a gray alien, but in turn offered potential reasons for the alien abduction phenomena still happening today in our modern world. She offered that she was inside a craft, and although it was light in the room in which she stood, she could see the overpowering blackness of space outside. There was a constant humming sound from the machines and devices inside the room, and as she looked around, she could see many other gray alien creatures. She continued that they controlled the craft with their mental powers, and that the craft itself, or more specifically, the machines, were also aware and responded to their commands as a person would. She would then make a statement that gives us a very clear insight into the mindset of this gray alien race. She would state, "Random negative thoughts can be very destructive, so we do not have individual thinking anymore. It would be too dangerous. Our collective thinking is so powerful it washes away individual deviations. The important thing is survival." According to Pauline, too much individual thinking had led to greed, and ultimately, this greed had led to the breakdown of their society, as well as disastrous consequences for their entire race. She would elaborate that this gray alien race had terrible troubles with their physical bodies, specifically their digestive systems. Because of this, they couldn't nourish themselves adequately, adding that they existed on a soup-like drink, and their bodies didn't work properly. She would continue that this had also had an effect on their ability to reproduce. They used to reproduce in the same manner as humans or most mammals. However, the damage their bodies had suffered caused terrible abnormalities in their offspring, and so this way of reproducing was abandoned. This damage had been caused by exposure to radiation due to them destroying their home planet. Even those who managed to flee the wrecked world had already been exposed, and now they faced the very real danger of disappearing from the face of the galaxy. They did, though, have very long lives. Of further interest, Pauline stated that there was a hierarchy to this alien society, with those at the top of this structure residing in different parts of the galaxy, including on artificial worlds that they themselves had created. She continued that while their race had bases on various moons, these were, in reality, nothing more than staging posts and refueling stops, adding that they now permanently traveled through space to find a new home. They had, she continued, traveled vast distances, looking for worlds that could support life in our form, with multiple crafts searching different regions of the universe. Then further, even more startling revelations came. According to Pauline, their scanners eventually picked out a solar system where the third planet from its star initially appeared suitable for their purposes: Earth, long before man evolved. She would continue that further study of the planet suggested it was not tremendously suitable, and that there was too much light that would cause damage to their race. However, it was a suitable place for them to regroup and obtain supplies from the terrain. Pauline then recalled memories of them landing on Earth, offering descriptions of how the planet appeared then. She would state that they landed near a green coastal area with a desert behind them. There were, she continued, lots of different fish in the water, as well as many different insects on land. The planet was so hot and bright that, for the most part, the Greys sent out robotic devices to scan for valuable minerals. While recalling these apparent memories of a past life, Pauline also told that depression set in on the whole crew, as the realization that they were unlikely to find another planet like their own, which was now destroyed, set in. And while the mission on Earth was productive, it was generally an unhappy time. She continued, for example, how the crew used laser cutters to obtain the minerals they required from the ground and rocks, which were then mixed with water to make the soup they needed for sustenance, something they were very much in need of. In fact, she recalls how it was the first time the crew had felt such energy within them for a long time. The more time they spent on Earth, the more they realized how fertile it was for life, despite the fact that it was not entirely suitable for them. However, it was when they left Earth that the most remarkable and thought-provoking revelations came. She recalled how they briefly examined the moon that orbited Earth before heading out to the fourth planet, Mars. Not only was there water on what we know as the Red Planet during this time, but also a humanoid population was extremely helpful to their visitors. So much so that a meeting of their leaders was called to determine how they could help this gray alien civilization. According to Pauline's past life memories, this Martian civilization offered the Greys a permanent home in the vast tunnel systems beneath the surface of the planet. However, it was an offer they declined as it was not suitable for their purposes. They would leave the Red Planet and head out to the outer reaches of our solar system, and it was during this part of their seemingly never-ending roaming of space that the account takes an even more drastic and intriguing turn. Pauline would continue that the further out into the solar system they went, the more genuine fear set in among the crew. She would state that they became too frightened to think for themselves. She also elaborated that she, in her past life, worked in maintenance and would take her orders directly from the taller Greys, who in turn took orders from the machine intelligence, the central computer on our craft that is linked to other craft. This assertion is very interesting in that it somewhat matches with other unlinked research carried out by other investigators. The Grey alien race is said to have a hive mentality, with individual aliens not thinking for themselves. Indeed, some researchers argue that this aspect of their personalities presents the most problems for their apparent breeding and hybridization program. It was as they were leaving the solar system when things took a curious turn. According to Pauline, they were soon caught in a meteor shower and their craft was destroyed. All of the crew died. She described the aftermath of their deaths in great detail. From their astral bodies, they could see the wreckage of their vessel below them. They appeared silvery gray in color and looked like a cross between a gray and a tadpole. Then things turned even stranger. Entities that Pauline recalls as angels appeared and urged them to go with them to another dimension. She recalled this other realm as very bright but not the kind of light that hurts. She then went on to state that they were melting into the sun, passing through it, through the dimensions that link us to the Creator, the ultimate source of all being. It was here that Pauline's session came to an end. However, it had awakened many other memories about the Greys, as well as her own abductions and the reasons behind them. There is much to ponder regarding Pauline Delcourmin's claims, particularly the truly thought-provoking and bizarre nature of them. Is it possible that not only do extraterrestrials exist, but that many of us, like Pauline, might have once lived in existence on another world as one of these alien entities? And could there be a connection between these ancient beings the creator of all mentioned by Pauline, and other fascinating areas of the paranormal and supernatural. If there is any truth to Pauline's claims of having lived a past existence as an alien entity, it would force everyone, both inside and outside the UFO community, to contemplate the true nature of our reality and where we fit into it. And what should we make of the claim that these gray aliens, in particular, appear to be behind at least some of the many alien abduction encounters that seemingly continue to happen worldwide as part of a breeding program to save their dying race? As preposterous as it sounds, many other researchers have arrived at the same conclusions. If there is any truth in such assertions, is humanity simply being used in the short term, rightly or wrongly, until this alien race achieves its goals, at which point we will be left to continue our collective evolution? Or could there be a more malevolent and brutal end in store, one that sees humanity wiped out altogether? Alternatively, could there be a third possibility, one that sees the creation of alien-human hybrids who would then become the dominant strand of humanity on Earth?
I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe to support this kind of content. See you on the next travel.